Welcome to Rise, this time from Monte, Switzerland, and the White Pod Eco Resort, where I'm running a strategy session for a hospitality company. I am Professor Demian Hodari of EHL Lausanne.
And from a very lovely London, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're joining us from around the world. And thank you for joining us once again on Rise. We are day 574 of our 100-day labor of love. And we are thrilled that you've been with us on this incredible journey, a long journey, dare we say, to make sure that we all stay focused, committed on, and towards our travel, tourism, and hospitality industry, one that we know is going to be critical in terms of global recovery and all of the connectivity that we're missing. We're very excited to have you as our viewers joining us on the Zoom platform. For those of you on the YouTube platform and on Facebook Live, please do register through Zoom so we can have you as part of our conversation, part of our Q&A, and sending through, like you will today, questions for our outstanding executives and residents. Now, Professor Hodari has always said, we need to bring the big names to the stage of Rise. And we have done that with 4 seasons now of incredible executive residents. But when it comes to having an executive in residence who is at the forefront of travel and tourism, journalism, broadcasting, production, there is no one like Samantha Brown. She is an Emmy Award-winning leader and host of not just her own program, but a champion for the travel and tourism industry. And we're thrilled to have her with us today. So, Professor Hodari, especially for you and our Chief Wizard of Oz, Jessica, why don't you tell us a bit more about what's happening today, sir?
Sure. Well, besides Samantha Brown, we've got industry reports, not only from CoStar's Jan Freitag presenting some STR data. We've also got an interesting report from ANITA'S report from the COP26 conference that took place. So some exciting stuff for today's show. But before we get to any of that, as always, we like to begin with our audience, and we have today's poll question for you. So which of the following do you rely on most for your 2022 travel decision-making? Please choose 2 of the following. All right, I am very curious to see what people have come up with, and we will see that a little bit later, as always. But for now, back to Anita.
Excellent. So as always, we say, where in the world are we? Looking at what we think you need to know about what's happening in our industry right now. So November 15th, cannot believe we are sliding rapidly towards December and the arrival of year-end holidays, Santa Claus, New Year's events, and everything. So I wanted to show this and look at it from the point of view of, and go. When are people actually booking their travel in terms of the short, medium, and long term? Now, historically, it would have been medium term. People are comfortable planning between 11 days and ultimately 3 months in terms of their plans for travel. What I thought was interesting was to see, even in September of 2021, so the end of the summer holiday season, the majority of the booking is taking place 90 days out, so 3 months out into the future. And second is coming through very much at looking at almost over 10%, 1 in 10 people booking in 1 to 10 days. What is this saying? Is that there's a huge amount of lack of confidence still in terms of travel planning. People are saying, I'll book closer to the travel time when I know I can actually go because I understand regulations, I understand border controls, I understand risks of further lockdowns, as we're hearing now across Austria, across the Netherlands, and looking at fears in Germany. Or I'm just going to wait until the first quarter of next year and not even worry about it until March break time. This I thought was interesting for a couple of points. Firstly, confidence levels. Secondly, how do you in the hospitality industry plan when it comes to staffing and supply chains? I thought this was a really interesting indicator of, for all that we say about the desire to travel, are people confident putting the money down and the calendar time down to say, I'm ready to go? Sir, over to you.
Have you booked your travel yet?
I have. I'm going back to Cape Town. I'm leaving on December the 10th, and I booked my trip 5 weeks ago, but I booked it knowing that there's a very good chance I will get locked down again in Cape Town as last year and end up staying in the waterfront in my flat in the sunshine at 30 degrees Celsius, which is not a bad backup plan if you're going to get locked down.
Okay, I just booked mine last week. I got something a little bit different. This is restaurant recovery, and it's comparing UK and US. So what I want people to focus on is this. Let's look at the UK first, the solid green line. That's comparing 2021 to 2019. So not comparing to COVID year, but pre-COVID. You can see that restaurant bookings, these are seated diners, both who booked through reservations and walked in. And you can see that those numbers are greater than they were in 2019. And that just began in May when restaurant visitation opened up in the country, suggesting that people have returned to dining with an increased fervor than they even had before. So more bookings, more people eating out, probably so frustrated from having missed so many months of really being able to do it, and demonstrating the resilience of that industry, and that people have not lost the appetite, pun intended, to go out to eat. In the US, though, you see a flat line, meaning that restaurant reservations and dining is still on par with 2019. We haven't seen an increase above and beyond the 2019 levels, but at least we're back to those levels. And I think this is just, again, what we've been saying for a year and a half. People understood when they had to stay home. They were frustrated to do so, but they're returning back to many of the behaviors they had before the pandemic, at least with regards to restaurants. And as we'll see a little bit later with our conversation with Samantha Brown, are they doing so with travel and tourism as well?
It's a great indicator because it's the first step that people have in terms of rebuilding their social muscles, just going out to dine again and meet up with friends. So really good one to show. Thank you.
All right, and we've got another piece of data, this time from our friend Jan Freitag from CoStar with his STR data and his analysis, as always, of the hotel industry. Over to Jan.
Hello, Anita, and hello, Professor Hodari. Thank you so much for having me back. I want to spend a quick couple of minutes and tell you about the new STR hotel forecast that STR's President Amanda Hite presented at the 43rd NYU Hotel Investment Conference, which took place on Monday and Tuesday in New York City. Roughly 1,000 or so of our friends and colleagues got together at the Marriott Marquis, unmasked. You had to upload your vaccination passport to the NYU website, and then when you entered the hotel, there was another checkpoint. You had to show your vaccination passport, and you received a wristband. But that allowed you then to be unmasked around your industry colleagues, which was nice to see a lot of them again for the first time in 2 years. When you look at the forecast here on slide 1, what we're doing is we're looking at 2019 and indexing that at 100. And then we're saying, when are we back to 2019 levels, which is the question that's on a lot of operators' minds. And what you're seeing here is that room demand and ADR are back to 2019 levels at the end of 2022. So for the full year 2023, we're actually seeing recovery on room demand, ADR, and RevPAR levels. And that is a year earlier than the prior STR forecast had suggested. So that is certainly good news. Again, there was a lot of optimism on the CEO panels and in the hallways, in the conversations. And a lot of this demand is driven by the leisure traveler. But let's have a look at the second slide. And what you see here is that when you adjust room rates for inflation, that we are not reaching 2019 room rates until past 2025. The American economy is such that everything is getting more expensive. There are a lot of bottlenecks, there's a lot of demand, very limited supply, and wages continue to go up. So everything is getting more expensive. It is not a question of top line growth. We're definitely going to drive a lot more room rate. The question is how much is falling to the bottom line, how much is being eaten up by that inflation. So I'm showing you this because this exact story is going to play out around the world. I don't think we're going to have a problem driving room rate. The question is, can we drive the bottom line? That's the question for 2022. Thanks so much for having me. See you next time.
I'm really glad he brought up the inflation issue, because that's been something in my work with companies and at the university we haven't really had to talk about for the last few years, at least, that there's been so low inflation. It really hasn't played out. And I think this is a critical thing for people to be considering. So thanks to Jan for that.
It's a great tip that he gave. And as always, I mean, he's just He's a sweetie, I'll say it. But I love the fact as well that he's taken really seriously creating this bespoke content for Rise. Because not only did he share that exactly as you said about the charts, he also shared a perspective on entering major events again as an executive, how past the vaccine certificates have become incredibly important to even getting in the room and getting people back again. So it's lovely that he's brought that on as an experiential sharing, not just a statistical sharing. So Jan, as always, thank you, sir.
Yeah, when we had our event show episode, what was it, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, this was one of the things we talked about with the executives was how will events manage admittance to the events once people are allowed to travel again. So it's nice to see that different event organizers are taking this seriously and finding ways to make it work. We've got a couple of headlines for the audience as always. I've got one that I was pretty happy when I saw this one. IHG throws out employment rule book with new flexible model. Okay, let's not exaggerate this. This is in Australia, and this is for hotels that are managed by IHG. So not the franchise owner operated models, but there's over 40 hotels that fit this criteria. And what IHG is doing is telling employees, not only can you sign up with our great Kronos app for the times you want to work and the days you want to work, but you can also say which of our 40 hotels do you want to work at. So maybe you want to work at one hotel for a couple days, and then you want to travel and work at another hotel for a couple additional days. They figured out, at least it sounds like they figured out, how to make this work, not only for the employees, but also for the hotels. I imagine it's just a scheduling nightmare, but it seems critical enough for them to offer this flexibility to the employees. We know the trouble that companies are having attracting and retaining employees, and that flexibility, as we saw in our poll last week, I think it was, is being critical to the decision-making process. So very happy to see companies taking on board new ways to address a significant problem for the industry. And I'll be curious to see not only whether this works for IHG in Australia, but whether this is something other companies are going to be able to adopt in a larger numbers going forward.
You know what's interesting, Demian? At the very beginning of Rise, you positioned Rise as a capture of the living case study of what we are living in the pandemic. And this is a great example because, to your point, all these different companies, all these different countries are just trying out new ways of doing things to figure out what's going to work. So I love this because this is another example of how we're just trying to find a way to, how do you make sure we bring the employees back and keep them happy? And as you said, manage the scheduling as well. But it's a great example of everyone's trying to figure this out together because we're living the great hypothesis. So thank you for that. So I had some fun and I chose one specially for you, Demian, because I know how much you have missed Sex and the City. I know that it was your way of understanding your wife and your daughters. And since it's been off air, it's just been hard. It's been hard figuring out how women have evolved. So very cool thing that I saw come up. Airbnb was working with Warner Brothers and they created basically a recreation of Carrie Bradshaw's brownstone apartment. Now I know, sir, that you wish you were in New York right now and not in your John Boy log cabin. But reason being, because they on November the 8th opened up bookings for 2 days at $23 a night, the opportunity to actually go and stay in Carrie Bradshaw's apartment. Why $23? Because believe it or not, it was 23 years ago that Sex and the City first debuted when you were just a young lad, Professor Hodari. Sarah Jessica Parker even got into the fun by being a virtual host. So when people checked in, they were actually able to engage with her. I thought this was fabulous for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's a great way of promoting the extension of the series of Sex and the City that's going to be launching in early December with HBO Max. And just like that is what it's called. It's the sequel to the series. It's also a very, very sexy way of Airbnb getting into new markets, into new headspaces, having come out of the pandemic. I thought this was brilliant. Now, very fun. I was able to tap into Velma Corcoran, our senior executive at Airbnb, and also one of our former Rise executives in residence, and just checked what was the impact of this. And this was fascinating. In the first 72 hours of a news being announced of this actually happening, so well before it booked, they had global media of 2,500 plus stories worldwide, 500 US broadcast clips, 125,000 listing page views, and it was 100% positive sentiment of coverage. So for every time that you looked at the listing, Professor Hodari, Airbnb thanks you because you bumped up their rankings. And it was remarkable. You think, what a great way of a hospitality brand, an accommodation brand, connecting to ultimately an icon that's reinventing with a series renewal. I thought this was absolutely fabulous and quite a sexy idea.
I guess you missed the episode when I was her crush and actually was able to spend a couple of nights in that apartment. I think it was 19 years ago, but apparently that show was never to be seen again. It was only aired once.
I'm impressed because if you were there for 2 nights, that's a lot more nights than the usual. So moving on swiftly from that. Exactly, Professor, as you said, we have a video choice. Now, I brought this in as my video choice for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I thought this scene was very powerful. It's a news clip from CNN, but more importantly, I want to call out the timing of it. We would have thought this would have happened last year. This happened just a matter of days ago. And please, everyone, keep an eye out in the video clip for the little tiny people, because those little tiny people weren't even born before the pandemic. So over to the video, please.
I'm waiting for my parents, actually, Aurora's grandparents. They're coming from Spain. I'm just grateful I have my mask on because I think I'm gonna be so emotional about it.
My family were banned from coming to the US to visit for 600 days. They missed our wedding. They missed the birth of their grandson. My family over the past 2 years have cancelled 4 or 5 flights. When they announced the date, they booked the first flight they could.
So that was last week when the US opened up its borders to non-essential US travelers coming in. Why sharing this? Because we are still living this process. And it's just to keep our minds and our hearts open to the fact that everyone needs to get through this or none of us get through it. So a little video clip just to kind of poke your soft underbelly, Professor Hodari, who's on his way to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I saw this data about how few people are saying they're going to travel over the Thanksgiving weekend, which is normally the busiest travel weekend in America. But I still have hope that, or expectations that more people are going to travel than had planned to, a little bit because it's easier, they can, and they just need to. So it'd be interesting to see that number.
Indeed. And our second little intel clip, as Professor Hodari was saying, we're going to be showing it from Haldane Dodd, the Executive Director at ATAG, the Air Transport Action Group. Now, why have we asked him to contribute? Because last week he and ATAG were in Glasgow for COP26, and I was very blessed to be with them as well for a sustainable aviation event. Why was it important that aviation be at COP26? Because as we know, aviation has been a source of higher emissions than we are wanting in the world and contributing at a level that we are wanting to reduce. What's important is that aviation is vital to global travel and trade, both in terms of economic connectivity and community connectivity. What we need to do is not stop aviation, but stop the level of carbon emissions that are going out. And that is exactly why the Aviation Leadership Committee was there at COP26 to play a part in making the commitments real going into the future. So a little bit of a video clip to have Haldane giving us a sense of what exactly happened in Glasgow and what does this mean for global aviation? Haldane.
Greetings from the Air Transport Action Group offices in the heart of the UN climate talks here in Glasgow, COP26. By the time you see this, the event will be over, hopefully with a good political outcome. The negotiators are working hard right now to make that happen. One of the things that we talk about here at COP is aviation's commitment to CO2 emissions reductions, and indeed the commitment that we made just about a month ago now as a whole industry to go net zero by 2050. It's going to be a significant challenge. But even coming off the back of the pandemic, which has been probably the worst time in aviation history, we're still seeing commitments for new offtake agreements for sustainable aviation fuel, new purchases of more efficient aircraft, and a raft of new technology developments, including things like hydrogen and electric, which may be possibilities for aviation. So we're certainly committed. We're sending this message to the delegates here. And one of the things that we are also talking about is the hope that we can get a long-term goal agreed not only by the industry, but by the entire sector at the ICAO assembly next year in Montreal. It's a key year for aviation to make sure that our commitments line up with the Paris Agreement and with all other sectors around the world. I'm very confident that we can do that. And of course, we need government support to make that happen, and support from everybody across the industry as well. So hopefully that's given you a little insight as to what we do here at these climate talks, and very happy to give you more information. I'm sure Anita and the team will be able to provide you with links through to our Waypoint 2050 report, which details how we get to net zero. Thanks very much.
So let's take a quick look at the results of our first poll that we asked you about a little while ago. All right, Anita, still people relying on word of mouth and travel agents, which is what I relied on 30 years ago, as opposed to blogs and social media and even television.
Yeah, it's interesting because to me, word of mouth and Facebook are very much linked, but I see travel agent directly reflecting the fact that for what people want to, where people want to travel agents are critical in terms of how they can travel, regulations, risks, all of that. So not surprising, but very interesting in terms of where the credibility is coming from and the importance of getting the news you need to know from the people who know what's going on, which is a perfect segue into our next segment, which is our executive in residence. And today's rise is a star-studded one. I say that not with my usual overzealous adjectives, but it really is. We are honored to have joining us from the US early morning with her coffee in hand, Samantha. An award-winning American television host who is confident that she has the best job in the world. Many of you will recognize Samantha as she is a very familiar face in the travel world when it comes to being on air and telling us where we need to be. She started with the Travel Channel in January 28. She began hosting her own program, Samantha Brown's Places to Love on PBS. On May 3rd, 2019, Places to Love won the Emmy for Outstanding Travel and Adventure program, and Samantha, our dear guest, won the Emmy for Outstanding Host. We are thrilled to have you with us, Samantha. Thank you for joining the Rise stage. We really are incredibly grateful. So, excellent, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's worth getting up for, absolutely, to be on Rise. And I've been paying attention, and just fascinating information that comes out every single day about travel around the world. It's hard to keep up. So I really appreciate the refresher course right from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in, Samantha, with the first question based on that poll. Did that surprise you at all that people are still relying on travel agents, or back to relying on travel agents and word of mouth, as opposed to, and I guess I need to put it out, but the social media, or sorry, television, as recommendations of places to go and where to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really still positive. Word of mouth, people trust their friends, their family members, and of course, travel agents or advisors really see themselves in a new light, because people are finding it difficult to navigate the pandemic because things change so often. So it's really nice to see that the people who had our trust way back when are regaining it because of these times. A little disappointed in the television percentage. However, I know just here in the United States, broadcast television shows dedicated to travel are few and far between. So most people do get it through, I feel like, social media and blogs. So therefore, I was surprised that it wasn't higher with Facebook or Instagram, and that it really was word of mouth. So what's happening is they're watching my show, and then they're telling my friends to do what I did. So maybe there is a connection.
Perfect.
You make, Samantha, that being multi-platform is critical in that regard. They might not see it on television, but you do have the other platforms that they're still getting the input. I'm curious though, because I want to pick on a comment you made just a moment ago about trust in terms of credibility of what people are saying. You've been out there since you were a baby, and look at how long you've been there. I'd love to understand how you view the trust that people have in your coverage has shifted in the last year and a half, particularly when people were grounded and they relied on you to being the compass and the sensitizer about getting back in the world again?
Yeah, I mean, trust is everything. It's something that I've worked for 22 years to achieve. You don't get it lightly. And when you have it, you keep it. And the way you keep it is that you make sure that you're someone who's still giving people truth and honesty and just sort of plain speak about what's happening. And so for us, when the pandemic happened, we shoot a travel show. We have travel and TV production, two industries that were just decimated by the shutdown. But we knew it was very important that we get back as soon as we possibly could. And this was as we saw numbers come down, but before a vaccine here in the United States, we knew we could possibly shoot the show in a way that would keep everybody safe, but still have me out there, because people do look to me for that type of advice. And what does that mean that I'm not traveling? And I do want to travel. So how can we make it possible? And so we started that last year. We went back into production, and then for 2021, we shot 8 episodes. We just finished maybe 3 weeks ago shooting our season 5. And so all along the way, people haven't seen this show yet because we're in post-production. It'll air in January, but all along the way, very, documenting again and again, very specific safety concerns. There's this whole level of safety that people never even thought about, that we wanted to make sure that was a part of our social media outreach as well, that would be there, how we wore masks, how we talked to people, how it was still all possible to have these travel experiences while distanced, while masked. That magic was still there. So that's what we wanted to get across.
Interesting. Can I build on that one for a second, Professor? Because I think one thing that's really interesting is how you've been within that community of, and I use the word loosely, of influencers, because you have been influencing, but influencers move from being a verb and an adjective to a noun in many ways. But to your point, you've gone back in the travel world as, I think, an ambassador, because clearly you take very seriously the responsibility you have of being the first look into the travel world. How has your coverage shifted in terms of what you are sharing with people, not just the where?
Well, this is a shift that I feel in my heart has happened within the travel industry that we're just starting to see. Like you said, this is just sort of a day by day what's happening. And this is my belief that that we're going to be, as travelers, even more interested in local communities and neighborhoods, because we've come from a time where supporting our own local community was a part of our own survival, right? So we actively, as people in a neighborhood, sought out restaurants to get takeout from. Who's that artist who we could buy a piece of pottery from? Who's the musician who maybe we could Zoom with and pay money? So we understood that we were all in this together. That's how we survive. And I believe going forward, and this is my belief, people are now going to take that experience with them, knowing that no matter where people go, how far, how foreign, it is someone else's local, right? And so we're going to want to interact. So it really goes beyond just be with the locals, go where the locals go. Who is the community? And because when travelers become more a part of that community, we become less of consumers and more a part of that community. And I feel like people are much more interested in now, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, we're still there, just having experiences that really allow us to reconnect as human beings. We lost that human connection. We understood how important it is. How do we connect on a more human level? So that's my idea of what the pandemic put us in and how it's going to change us as travelers, and what we've already put into our travel series.
You make a great point about how travel pre-pandemic was, it's all about me, whereas now it's all about we, which is an interesting. So, Professor.
Yeah, I guess it's a slightly different question. I'm curious about changing travel behaviors beyond that. So, for example, we were talking a little bit before the show, and we've all been traveling during the pandemic, and I've traveled with my kids as well. And that was a pretty difficult decision to take, but then one that I took. And I'm wondering, are you seeing any other fundamental issues going on or changes that people need to make about how they travel, how often they travel, when they travel? Is travel going to become a right of only of the wealthy going forward, only of the vaccinated? How long is it going to take? I mean, I'm just wondering your other perceptions about the changing nature of the industry.
I think the opposite happened where, yeah, I think there was this, and still is this idea that only people who are privileged get to travel, and not just privileged with money and time, but confidence, right? Those three things are needed to travel. And those who didn't have it felt like, well, I can't travel. But one thing that the pandemic did is we all, again, just went locally and found out that within our own towns, maybe an hour away was a beautiful lake we had never been to, maybe 3 hours away within our own state, because here in the United States, we could only travel within our state. We couldn't even cross borders into other states, which was amazing to me. But so we figured it out, well, what's 2 hours from my home that can be that hike, that can be that lake, that can be that just really nice little town where maybe we grab a sandwich and eat outdoors. And then all of a sudden that became possible, that travel, the importance of it has never been measured in miles. How far can I go? How exotic a locale is. It's just more of that state of mind of being connected to a place, to people. And my goodness, we could have that in day trips. So I feel like people, the exact opposite happened. There was more confidence to say, hey, I just did this within my own state. I'm going to do it again. And maybe now I'll venture a little further and a little further off. So I think it made us all feel like travel was much more possible because it was so condensed, and yet we did it. And now that things open up, people feel they have more of that confidence that, well, we can do this.
Okay. It's funny. I love that you say that about domestic travel. And as you say, even state travel, because one of the smartest things governments did was say travel, but travel locally, because at least it activated the supply chains and again, got our social muscles moving. And also, I mean, as you know extremely well, travel domestically and regionally was always the poor cousin to, as you say, the longer haul, the exotic destination.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You're an interesting bridge, Samantha, between destinations and travelers. From a destination perspective, whether it's local, regional, international, how has their focus on communicating shifted post-pandemic compared to what they were wanting to communicate to travel audiences prior? Has there been a shift at all?
Yeah, I think the shift has been, certainly during the pandemic, there were a lot of those really wonderful videos about far-flung islands where there was only one post office and one person, and we loved them. We loved these remote spaces that were just about maybe being with ourselves, maybe being with one or two other people. We didn't want too many people around us. But I think the idea of, and I always equate it with punctuation, travel destinations wanted to show their exclamation points, right? Travel was always in terms of exclamation points. And now travel destinations feel more confident in showing their commas, right? They're more confident in showing just the subtle and the softer experiences and adventures. Not everything has to be change our life big. We've already gone through something that has completely changed our lives. Maybe we want to tread a little softly. And so you see destinations more confident in showing these little jewels that, no, they're not the top 5, maybe not even the top 10 things, but that's going to give you a respite. That's going to give you a deeper look into the culture and the people here. And we want you to know who we are, not in terms of our things to do, but who we are as people. So I've definitely felt that change, and Brand USA just released a video they did, because now finally we have international travelers coming back. And basically the whole video is just Americans in different parts of this country saying what they love about where they live. And so it comes from a deeply personal place. It's just one person talking to the other. And I thought that was really striking, because it was much more personal. It was much more not toned down, but it was just I guess more intimate is the word. That even in this big country, the United States, with so many amazing experiences, they were going for more of the intimacy of the experience. And maybe they're just, really tapping into how people are feeling, that we're still sort of like, okay, what is this? What is this going to be like? I don't know. And just kind of a warmer welcome, right? Just like, hey, you're going to be fine here. So.
It's an interesting reflect to your point. The nature of the invitation has changed. And in focusing on the commas, you eliminate the question marks, which is really, I'm curious if I can just build on that, because I find the whole issue of communication really important and examples, because as the world opens up now, it's going to become very loud and very competitive in terms of the fashion show of travel. Do you have examples or any destinations you can think of that are doing it right, that have actually either through the pandemic or now? I've always focused on, for instance, Greece, when they did the whole Greek summer campaign, where everyone was locked down, but Greek summer was a state of mind. And keeping that thought there, are there any examples you can share that our viewers can actually look to as that's a good lead?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had to focus mainly on the United States. Unfortunately, I couldn't travel abroad, but the destinations that I found really are going to have something really different to say, and that's really going to attract more travelers, are the destinations that realized, oh, we need to take care of the people who live here first. There has to be a quality of life that our own citizens enjoy first, as opposed to the travelers coming in. So San Antonio, Texas is a really great example of this. San Antonio, Texas is one of the most beautiful little Texas cities in the world that has what's called the River Walk. And it's this river that literally goes through the city, but the city is above it, the river is below, and when you walk below, it's all trees and bridges, and there are buildings all throughout, and there's dining, and people are out and enjoying themselves. Well, of course, during the pandemic, this completely shut down. And now all these businesses had nobody to come. So they did an outreach to their own citizens. And one person who we then featured in our show was this woman who was an American vet who loved kayaking. She decided she wanted to kayak to get away from her active duty, which was really stressful. And she wanted to bring kayaking back into the Riverwalk, which was no longer possible. For 50 years, you couldn't kayak the Riverwalk. And when all of a sudden the pandemic happened, she said, why can't we bring citizens back to their own river? And finally, the city said, yes, we're going to try it for 4 weekends just because of the pandemic. Well, it was a massive success. And it brought people downtown that never went downtown because this was a tourist area. And so now she's still doing it a year later. And now people are coming, and now there's more locals. And travelers don't want to just be with ourselves. We want to be with the people who live in that place. So it was that perfect symbiotic relationship between, if you are just a destination that is all about your tourists and your tourism, you're missing a huge point of why people travel. You have to be a place where there's a high quality of life to begin with. And as travelers, we want to be a part of that life. We don't want to just get this like separate kind of theme park experience. We really want to be a part of what makes San Antonio, Texas, a really different place. So that's just one example there that I found.
Thank you. And I apologize for asking you favorite child question, but I appreciate it now.
No, but I want to get to this audience questions, but maybe a quick answer to this one. You talked about quality of life, but there's also the workers in the industry. And so if we talk about, our audience who are in the industry, or maybe they've left the industry, some of them, what have you learned over the past year that you would say can give some confidence, if you believe that there is confidence, of people pursuing a career in the travel and tourism industry? It was hit so hard, it's so susceptible to economic changes or to pandemics or to political turmoil. Why convince our audience that this is still an industry that has good career opportunities and quality of life?
Well, one, I love the hospitality and the travel industry because you're constantly meeting new people. Even if you're in one place, being a travel advisor or working in a hotel, or even I waited on tables for 12 years. I love the fact that I was just meeting different people every day, and that it was really, I was a huge part of their success. Even in New York City, when I'd wait on tables and people would sit down, like, where are you from? Oh my goodness, tell me about it. I love that. And I think you can't, if you have that personality, the hospitality and travel industry is just perfect for you. Clearly, there are some challenges. And here in the United States, not only do we have the pandemic challenges, but we also have payment challenges. We have been hit, people have literally just exited the travel industry. I'm sorry, like restaurants, especially because it's hard work. You're not paid well sometimes because of tips. Sorry, this is just the United States. But also maybe people aren't treating you so well. So people in the managerial positions, people in the CEO positions need to take a look about how their workers are being treated, and make sure that the people who they hire are able to be themselves, whether it's through pay, whether it's time off, whether it's through benefits. Again, this is a very specific American issue, because when I waited on tables in New York City, I made $1.82 an hour. That's incredible. Everything else was tips. And I was absolutely beholden on people to give me tips to make that living. So, I mean, we can really dial it down to and get in the nitty gritty of this, but those things have to be solved first. Because, but then I believe they are, because travel is just absolutely, it's so important to every economy. It is the economy. And so people have to do, in positions of power, have to do better about treating just even like the bell person, the housekeeper a little bit better.
So do you think this will help shape what are the great places to visit? Is those places that have found ways to elevate the quality of life of the employees? Is that something you're looking at all in your shows or in your investigations?
Well, for our show, we basically do cities and towns. So I rarely do just like resort specific, but I have heard, and just like, reading just how many like that is now a real stress point for like resorts in Caribbean islands, especially during the pandemic when everyone was going there. It really made us question, well, I'm going to Jamaica. What if I have the virus and now I bring it to an island? We understood the connectivity of all of us. And if I go to a resort and now they get sick, what is that? And that just sort of started this greater conversation of a traveler's responsibility to the places that they're going to. Maybe not the worker, but the traveler. If I'm going to this area, is that really the best time to go there? Is this the best place? How do they treat their employees? What is that? Like, all of a sudden, this has become more interesting for the traveler in terms of deciding where they bring their money, because their money, they understood the power of their money, and why not make it work the best it can. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I hope it plays out well, because people do need to be treated well. They do need to have better pay. They do need to have benefits. And I feel like if travelers are demanding that and putting their money in places that'll rise all ships.
And sadly, it's a global issue, and
Yeah.
not. I think you were beautiful in your diplomacy of
Mhm.
it. It's a global issue we face. So
Yeah.
I know that our voice of God, our voice of grace, is twitching because there are questions coming through.
Yes, thank you. One of our first questions is from Jennifer, and she says, as one of the only female travel hosts on television, what advice would you give to other women in the industry who want to pursue a public-facing role in travel and tourism?
Oh, wow. One, do it if you want to. Now, when I started, I only had TV. There was no Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And so if you want to be a part of that, you just start, what is your personality? Definitely have your approach to travel, understand what that is, and just put it out there every single day. And you slowly get a following, whether it's blogs, vlogs, TikTok, that sort of thing, and just create your own niche. But it's really much more attainable than it was back in the day. I hate when I like date myself. I'm like, when I was so young. But yeah, I started 22 years ago, and it was either a travel television show, and that was it. And so now there's so many more opportunities just to put yourself out there and do what you love.
Grace, another question?
Yes, of course. This one's come from Julia, and she says, did you feel extra responsibility in how you spoke about travel as someone people look to before making purchase decisions?
Making purchase decisions?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think with my show, if you mean purchase decisions, like what type of travel I purchase, I guess I'm not understanding the purchase side of that.
I presume it's more destination choice.
Okay. We focus on smaller cities, smaller towns, and the people we focus on within our shows are all mom and pop businesses, a woman in one dream kind of businesses. So we really make sure that everything we're doing is a supremely local and like one person in a dream kind of business. So we're supporting that and making sure they understand the effort that it takes to create the experiences that we as travelers just get to show up and have, whether it's an amazing meal or a work of art. Because I feel like as travelers, when we understand how hard people work to make something happen, all we want to do is support that. So that is our sort of focus in the businesses that we show. They are really, it's just sort of non-corporate at all. It's just like that one business, it's that one dream, and we just want to support it that way. So yes, we were extremely vigilant and have an eagle eye on who gets on our show. So in our show, if we have like 8 people we're featuring, we actually vet 20, and we go to that place before we show up with my cameras, and we talk to every person and we get to know their story, and only then do they get to be in the show. So it isn't something that we just research online and then say, yep, you're in it. We meet them personally, and then we decide, yeah, they're a perfect fit. So there's a lot of vetting in what we do to make sure who we put on TV. And each episode we do has been seen, our first episode's been seen 4 million times. We take that very seriously, that people watching it go, oh, I want to have that experience. So I guess the short answer is yes.
Grace, let's take another question.
I think this is the ideal question to wrap up with, Demian. It is, as international travel starts up again, where are you hoping to explore next, either with your family or professionally?
Oh gosh, anywhere. I just anywhere. We had plans last year to shoot in London as well as Austria. I would love to go back there, even Dubai. I guess when you're a traveler, the world just gets bigger, not smaller. And I was able to actually travel this summer to France, and it was phenomenal. Just meeting people, and there were Bordeaux. There was such a reciprocity of, oh my gosh, we're here, and oh, we're so glad you're here, and that's what you wanted, because that's what travel is about. And I feel like that's going to happen wherever you go. That just, wow, we really took it for granted, didn't we?
I'm going to pull this together then before I hand over to Demian to close off. And Samantha, I have a question for you. And it comes with an invitation. When you're in London, I have
Yes.
squirrel friends in the park that have kept me sane for the last year to introduce you to take command. You went from season 1, 2, 3, 4. There was a great momentum. You had incredible viewership. You've got a brand personality that people trust. And then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a better journalist, spokesperson, advocate for travel because of COVID now in season 5 than you would have been had this not happened?
Oh boy. I feel like I'm better because I realized I have a voice, and I also have a way of getting that voice out. And that's really important. And so I have this platform where I can really shine a light on people who haven't had that light shown on them. That, travel kind of, again, that exclamation points and top 5s, I can easily go in another direction because it's my show and I own it, and show people what travel is really about, what I've known for 22 years. That's been really powerful to me, that, this is really important to me, that people understand in the end, we're all just human beings trying to get through the day, and we can actually help each other. Who can I show? Whose businesses, whose tour groups can I be a part of, to show that every day people make an effort to bring us closer, to understand that commonality that we all have, no matter where we go, and how powerful travel is. And it's not the exclamation points, it's these commas that really connect us as people, understand each other more, have more empathy. And that in the end is travel's true gift and power. The commonality, the empathy, and the passion that we all can connect with around this world.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, as much as I know that your closing comments have completely thrown our chief Wizard of Oz off, because she's already been in love with you to begin with. But from us at Rise, thank you very much. I'm profoundly grateful to you and to Kevin and to Al for suggesting this link. And I'll hand it over to Demian for the close. But travel safely, and I look forward to seeing you in London.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Demian. What a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here and sharing your voice with our audience. And congratulations again on the Emmy. And I know Anita is looking forward to winning her own Emmy. I don't think we can actually get one, Anita, with this show, but I'm sure there's some award out there that will be coming your way as well. And you guys can have that in common. So Samantha, thanks again so much. And hopefully we'll see you next time you're visiting Europe.
Yes.
So when I grow up, I want to be Samantha Brown, is what we're saying. Take care.
Good stuff, Anita. Good stuff. I mean, I think one of the things I like about being able to do the show, I would never have met Samantha Brown if it was not for this show. I'd focused so much on the hospitality industry. And I really learned so much about the tourism world and people involved in that industry because of this show. And I think that's a value as well to the EHL community and the hospitality community. We're so reliant on travel and tourism. I think this gives us a perspective that we don't normally have. So thanks to you for bringing Samantha to the show.
Well, I think what's important as well is I love what Samantha said at the end about the fact that this has been a hard year and a half. We've all kept bonded and momentum through Rise, Samantha through her program, but it's by implication the responsibility of voice, which we can never take for granted. We can't get cynical. You're much less grouchy than you were in season 1 because we have a responsibility to keep everyone's chins up and eyes forward and feel stop. So moving on swiftly, but again, thank you to Samantha and everyone who made that happen itself. So,
and now it's time for Total Knockout. Grace, I'm sure you've come up with something interesting for us to debate today.
I have indeed. Today's debate is, has the travel and hospitality industry done enough in the past 18 months to prepare for further lockdowns? Demian, take it away.
So I guess I've got the yes. Look, done enough, that's a loaded expression, but I will say it's done a lot. Everything from working with governments, working with banks to make sure that hotel owners and airlines don't go bankrupt and create an increased economic burden on the world, to hotel companies figuring out ways to get their product out there to keep relevant names, where we had many hotel companies offering virtual experiences, finding new destinations to go, the big brands working with their franchisees to keep them afloat, finding new products and services to offer to independent hotel owners that needed additional support in order to maintain relevant and financially viable. Clearly, the employee issue is a place that we, I was talking with someone today, a year and a half ago when we locked down and we were so concerned about everybody losing their jobs, I never had any conversation or saw any article saying, yes, but these employees won't return in a year and a half later. And as we've said, the pandemic has accentuated and brought to light some of the problems within the industry. And so I think that's a major area that we still have lots of work to do. If we do lock down again, I think the firms and the industries are better positioned and more knowledgeable, more experienced to be able to better survive. We got to address the employee issue, though. We haven't done enough there. Anita?
thank you very much. I love the fact that you covered off the a lot is about money. It's about policy. It's about product. It's about service. You're absolutely right. A huge amount has been invested in particularly technology so that if restaurants shut down, we've got the QR codes, the takeaway, the established databases, menu modifications, supply chain management, ghost kitchens, all that good stuff. So the yes is very easy, whether it's enough or a lot. What it's not is not human. And so all the money's been thrown at the problem from a technology point of view, but not a touch point of view. And this is where it's the same reason why I get so cross at conferences. We talk about human capital being the future of our industry, and yet it's the last thing on conference programs. My concern is this: we say, and exactly as Samantha said, we are a highly social industry. We are highly motivating for people who want social interaction. They love getting into conversations with different people in different places around the world. And then we lock people down. And then we open it up again, and then we lock them down again. And when she said that $1.80 was her wage, And then it was about tips on top of that. No amount of furlough schemes, no amount of compensation is going to make up for the lack of social connection. My fear is that we have done a lot when it comes to technology. We have not done enough when it comes to the mental health crisis and protecting people in terms of preventing them from being abandoned again. There's no solution that no QR codes is going to make people feel connected. What we need to do is invest in HR systems, in culture development systems that keep people connected genuinely with momentum and care, even if we have to disconnect because of lockdowns. That to me is going to be the deal breaker. Otherwise, as we've said, why shouldn't people leave when other industries are giving them the EQ and the investment in mental care and simply feeling a part of something and not first line, sorry, we have to let you go? I don't think we've done enough in terms of what the priority is. We've been busy, but the heart of the business is about hospitality, and we have not been hospitable to our own industry enough. So no, I don't think we have.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on all this. I think for me, as from the business perspective, is first businesses had to find a way to survive. They had to work with each other, with governments, with banks, et cetera, to maintain afloat so that there could be a place to employ these people. But I absolutely agree that there's an underlying crisis, and it's not just an employment crisis, it's a people crisis that needs to be addressed. And hopefully this is going to spur action in that way. And I have, the IHG example I gave before of companies finding ways to address what employees want, and there still is the mental health. So I agree with you there. All right, Grace. Great.
Time to vote. Do you agree with Demian that we've done an awful lot? We're working with governments, banks to ensure that airlines don't go bankrupt. The hotel companies are offering virtual visits or getting their brand out there. There is an employee issue, but we need to look at that, and we have more knowledge and experience this time round. Or do you agree with Anita that it is easy, but it's not human? Money's been thrown at tech and not touch. It's a highly social industry with lots of interactions. We've done a lot in terms of technology, but not enough for mental well-being. And there's not enough done in what the priority is. Hospitality is hospitable, and we have not been.
All right.
Good.
I don't know why we even do this. She should just recap before we even do it. All right, let's see what people have to say, Grace. Well done, Anita. That was a slaughter.
With the no to begin with. Thank you.
I did what I could. But I fully agree with you. There is a crisis there. We haven't done enough on the people side, and hopefully a year from now we can raise that question again and have a different answer. Our career opportunity of the week comes to us from the Mandarin Oriental in Marrakesh, Morocco, looking for a resort manager, helping to implement hotel-wide strategies. They want a bachelor's or advanced degree, fluent in French and English. And of course, as always, send us your interest in this and we will forward it along to them. And again, as always, great jobs in the industry. And I know the general manager of this hotel, former student, great place to work, great place to learn, and a great place to live, I assume. So let us know if you're interested.
How fun. So as we move on to the next episode, we will see you all back here in 2 weeks on the Rise stage, because the show must go on. We've got a great guest talking about theater, because at the end of the day, for the performers, for the audiences, we love this as part of the travel experience. And it's such an important part of keeping the culture and the vibe of a place alive. So we've got with us a superb executive in residence, Paul Miller, the artistic director of the Orange Tree Theatre, who has experience across London and the entire UK, across several different theatre platforms, who can talk at a global level. We'll see you back here on the 29th of November. As always, please do register on the Zoom platform so we can keep you involved in the Q&A, in the chat, in the voting as well. But from my side, a very loving wish of happy Thanksgiving to anyone who is celebrating across the world in the US. To everyone, we wish you a great 2 weeks. As always, please stay safe, stay strong, stay hopeful, keep your hands clean, and stay on Rise. Sir.
You said it all. Thanks everybody for watching this week. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, and let us know what you thought of this week's show. Bye bye.